He came back to a cabin he thought was empty, but smoke was already rising from inside. When he opened the door, a woman was standing there with a gun, and a German shepherd that didn't move, didn't bark, just watched him. She didn't ask who he was.
Adrian Cole.
She said his name like she had been waiting for him all along. That's when he knew. This wasn't someone hiding. This was someone who came looking for him. Buried under the snow was a list of people who had disappeared, and his name was already on it. The dog stayed between them, calm and unafraid, like it already understood the choice he was about to make. He could walk away and live, or stay, and face a truth powerful enough to destroy everything. And because sometimes God doesn't take you out of the danger, He places you inside it to see what you're willing to stand for. So where are you watching from? And what do you feel after hearing this story? If it meant something to you, please like and subscribe so we can reach 1,000 and keep these stories alive. The road disappeared long before the house came into view. Adrian Cole drove the last stretch by memory. White terrain, frozen ridges, and a sky so clear it felt like glass could shatter if the wind hit it wrong. The engine of his truck hummed low, steady, the only sound that belonged to him. Everything else out here belonged to silence. He didn't come to Wyoming to start over. He came because it was one of the few places left where no one asked questions. No neighbors, no patrol routes, no systems to plug into. Just snow, distance, and the kind of quiet that didn't argue back. Hawk sat in the passenger seat, unmoving. A German shepherd with a long, lean frame, his dark coat catching what little light the afternoon offered. His right ear stood sharp and alert, the left bent slightly at the tip, a permanent reminder of something neither of them ever spoke about. A thin scar traced down from beneath his left eye. The dog didn't look at Adrian. He was watching the house. Adrian followed that line of attention and finally saw it. Half buried under wind-pushed snow, the cabin stood crooked against the slope, wood darkened by years of neglect. He had bought it 2 weeks ago. Cash. No paperwork trail worth following. It was supposed to be empty. He slowed the truck. Then he saw the smoke. A thin column rose from the chimney, steady, controlled. Not the chaotic plume of something catching fire, but the kind you built on purpose, fed carefully, maintained. Adrian's grip tightened slightly on the wheel. That wasn't possible. He had checked the place himself. The fireplace had been clogged with soot and bird nests. The flue sealed tight. Nothing inside that house should have been capable of breathing heat. Beside him, Hawk shifted. Not forward. Back. Just a single, deliberate step. Weight pulling away from the dashboard. Adrian didn't look at him, but he felt it. That movement meant something. Hawk didn't retreat. Not from noise, not from strangers, not even from gunfire once upon a time. He only stepped back when something didn't fit the pattern. Adrian turned off the engine. The silence rushed in like pressure. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then Adrian exhaled slowly and opened the door. Cold air cut into him immediately, sharp enough to sting the lungs. His boots hit the snow with a muted crunch. The ground here wasn't untouched. He saw that the moment he stepped forward. Tracks. Not his. He crouched without thinking, the motion automatic, years ingrained into muscle and bone. The snow preserved everything. One set. Human. Average stride. Not hurried. Another. Canine. Larger than most domestic breeds. Deep impressions. Confident gait. And then, Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. A third pattern. Irregular. Broken. Something had been dragged. The snow showed it clearly, a long, uneven trail where weight had shifted across the surface, interrupted by shallow scrapes and deeper dips. Not a clean pull, not controlled. Struggle. Or weakness. Adrian reached up, thumb brushing the edge of his watch. He didn't check the time. He just rotated the crown once, twice, then let it settle. A habit. A reset. Hawk stepped out of the truck behind him, landing silently. He didn't rush ahead. Instead, he angled his body, positioning himself slightly off Adrian's left side, leaving a narrow gap between them and the house. A line of defense. Adrian stood, scanning the structure again. The smoke hadn't changed. Still steady. Still wrong. He moved forward. Each step was measured, not slow, but deliberate, weight-balanced, eyes tracking not just the house, but the space around it. The tree line, the slope behind, the blind spots where someone could wait. Nothing moved. That didn't mean anything. When he reached the porch, the boards groaned under his weight. Old wood, weak in places. He tested each step without looking down. Hawk stopped at the base. Didn't follow. Adrian paused. That was new. He glanced back. The dog stood still, head slightly lowered, eyes fixed not on the door, but on the side of the house. Adrian followed that angle. A window, half open, not broken, not forced. Opened, from the inside. Snow had drifted against the frame, but not enough to cover the edges. The wood around it showed faint scuffs, as if someone had pushed it out in a hurry, catching the frame on the way through. Not entry. Exit. Adrian felt something shift. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't been clean. He turned back to the door. His hand hovered near the handle, then stopped. Hawk made a sound. Low. Not a growl, not a bark. Something deeper. A vibration more than a warning. Adrian didn't open the door. Instead, he stepped off the porch and moved toward the side of the house, following the line Hawk had marked. The snow was thinner there, wind scattered. The drag marks curved around the corner. He followed them. They ended abruptly. No continuation, no clear direction. Just gone. Adrian straightened slowly, eyes scanning the open white beyond. Nothing. Too clean. Behind him, the chimney continued to breathe. He stood there longer than he needed to. Then, slowly, his thumb returned to the watch. One turn. Stop. He looked back at the house. Something started here, he said quietly, voice barely carrying in the cold air. Hawk didn't move. Adrian's gaze hardened just slightly. Not anger. Not yet. Focus. And it didn't finish. Adrian didn't knock. He opened the door. The heat met him first. Dry, contained, unnatural for a place that had been dead just weeks ago. The faint crackle of wood followed. Then the smell. Burning pine. Something metallic beneath it. He stepped inside without rushing. Hawk didn't. The dog remained just outside the threshold, body angled, not refusing, just choosing position over proximity. Adrian didn't look back. He closed the door behind him with a quiet push. The room had changed. Not restored, not lived in, but adjusted. Someone had made decisions here. The floor had been cleared in a narrow path. A chair moved closer to the fireplace. A blanket folded, not thrown. Small things, but intentional. Not hiding. Staying. Adrian took 2 steps forward. That's when the sound came. not from the floor, not from behind, but from his left. A shift of weight, controlled. Stop. The voice was steady, not loud, not shaking. Adrian stopped. He turned his head slowly. She stood near the far wall, just beyond the reach of the firelight. A handgun aimed directly at his chest, not trembling, not overextended. Her stance wasn't perfect, but it wasn't amateur either. Early 30s, maybe. Hair pulled back low, loose strands framing a face that hadn't slept properly in days. Not pale from fear, pale from endurance. Her eyes locked onto his, not wide, not panicked. Measuring. Behind her, a second figure moved. Lower, heavier. A German shepherd stepped into view, larger than Hawk, his coat darker in the firelight, tinged with a reddish tone beneath the black. His rear leg carried a slight hitch, not enough to slow him, but enough to notice. Atlas. Adrian didn't know the name yet, but he understood the stance, and the dog positioned himself just ahead of the woman, slightly forward, slightly angled. Protective, but not lunging. Hawk finally entered behind Adrian. He didn't growl, didn't challenge. He stepped once, then stopped, placing himself not beside Adrian, but between him and the dog. Not blocking. Balancing. Two lines drawn across the same room. For a moment, no one spoke. The fire cracked again, louder this time. Then she said it. "You took longer than I expected." Adrian blinked once. Not confusion, not surprise. Recognition. Not of her, of the situation. He lowered his hand slightly, just enough to show he wasn't reaching for anything. "You've been waiting for someone," he said. Her grip tightened just a fraction. "For you." The words didn't come out like an accusation. They came out like confirmation. Adrian studied her face, not for emotion, but for pattern. She wasn't bluffing, and not desperate, not lost. She was here with purpose. "Name," he said. A beat passed. Naomi Vance. The name settled in the room like something already known. Adrian didn't react immediately, but Hawk shifted, just slightly. Naomi saw it. Her eyes flicked to the dog, then back. "Dr. Elias Vance," she continued. "My father." Adrian's jaw moved once. He didn't speak. Naomi lowered the gun just an inch. Not trust, just recalibration. "He died 3 months ago," she said. "Officially, a vehicle accident, off a mountain road." A small pause. "Unofficially," she added, "he was documenting something he shouldn't have." Adrian stepped 1 inch to the side. Atlas adjusted immediately, mirroring the movement, placing himself back in Naomi's line. Hawk didn't move. That was the difference. Naomi noticed that too. Her gaze lingered on Hawk for a second longer than it should have. Then she looked back at Adrian. "He left me coordinates," she said. "This place. And a recording." Adrian's thumb brushed his watch again. Once. "Stop," he said. Naomi continued, voice tightening slightly. "If anything happened to him, I should find you." Silence. The fire shifted. A piece of wood collapsed inward, sending a brief spray of sparks upward. Adrian didn't look at it. He looked at her. "And you did," he said. Naomi's mouth pressed into a thin line. "I didn't come here to find you," she said. "I came here because this was the only location he trusted." A pause. "Finding you just made things worse." That was the first real emotion. Not fear, not grief. Anger. Adrian nodded once, slow. "That sounds about right." The tension didn't break. It changed shape. Naomi lowered the gun another inch. Not fully, not safely. Enough. "I listened to the recording," she said, more than once. Her voice shifted now, not softer, but more controlled. "He said you walked away." Adrian didn't answer. "He said you saw something and chose not to be part of it." Another step forward, small, careful. Atlas tensed, but didn't move. Naomi didn't stop him. "And then I started digging," she continued, "about you." Adrian's eyes didn't change. "You weren't a whistleblower," she said. "You weren't exposed." Her grip tightened again. "You disappeared." The word landed harder than the rest. Not accusation. Definition. Naomi raised the gun slightly, not aiming higher, just correcting alignment. "So don't tell me you're not part of this," she said. Her breathing had changed. Faster now. Controlled, but pushing. "Because everything I found says you are." Adrian looked at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. "You're still alive," he said. It wasn't a question. Naomi froze for half a second. "That's not an answer." "No," Adrian said. "It's a problem." The room tightened again. Something shifted. Not in stance, not in distance, but in understanding. Naomi's jaw clenched. "You think I don't know that?" Her voice rose, just enough to break the control. Then stopped. Mid-breath. She swallowed the rest. Atlas leaned slightly closer to her leg. Hawk remained still. Adrian watched that moment closely. Not the words. The break. Then he spoke again, quieter. "If your father trusted this place, he didn't leave it empty." Naomi's eyes flickered. Just once. That was enough. Adrian saw it. Not doubt. Direction. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, brushing snow against the side of the cabin. Inside, the fire steadied again. No one moved, but the lines between them had changed. Not allies. Not enemies. Something worse. Connected. The ground behind the cabin didn't look different at first. Snow had covered everything evenly. No tracks, no disturbances, just a smooth, untouched field stretching toward the tree line. If Adrian hadn't been watching the dogs, he might have assumed nothing was there. But Atlas didn't move like a dog searching. He moved like a dog remembering. Each step was deliberate, weight shifting unevenly over his injured leg, but steady. He wasn't sniffing randomly. He was following a line only he could see. Naomi didn't call him back. That alone told Adrian more than anything she'd said inside the cabin. Hawk stayed closer to Adrian this time, not scanning wide, not holding the perimeter. His focus narrowed, fixed on Atlas instead. Two dogs. Two different instincts. One leading, one measuring. Adrian followed. The cold had deepened as the light shifted, and the kind of late afternoon that felt like the world was holding its breath before night decided to take over. Their boots pressed into the snow, the only marks now breaking the surface. Atlas stopped. Not abruptly, just, finished. He stood over a spot near the base of a low ridge, his head lowered, body angled slightly forward. He didn't bark, didn't dig immediately. He waited. Naomi reached him first. She dropped to one knee without hesitation, brushing snow aside with gloved hands, not searching, confirming. "You see it?" she asked, not looking back. Adrian stepped closer. At first, nothing. Then, a subtle difference in texture. The snow here had settled unevenly, slightly denser, slightly compressed, buried. Not deep, not meant to be lost forever. Adrian knelt beside her, His fingers cut into the snow, faster now, less careful. The surface gave way easily, revealing darker patches beneath. Ice crust, then something harder. Metal. They cleared it together, the rhythm unspoken. A box emerged, rectangular, reinforced, edges sealed tight. Military grade, or close enough. The kind designed to survive water, pressure, time. Adrian's hand paused just above it. Hawk shifted beside him, not stepping forward, not retreating. Watching. Naomi leaned in slightly. "That's not something my father would have had access to," she said quietly. Adrian didn't answer. He wiped the last layer of snow off the lid. There were markings, faded, nearly erased, but still there. He recognized the pattern, not the exact code, but the structure. He had seen things like this before, a long time ago. He opened it. The seal broke with a muted snap. Inside, order, not chaos, not desperation. Intent. Documents wrapped in protective layers, folded maps, a small data drive secured into a foam slot, and beneath all of it, a stack of printed pages. Naomi reached for those first. Her hands were steady, but her breathing wasn't. She flipped through quickly at first, then slowed, then stopped. Adrian watched her eyes. The moment they changed. "What is it?" he asked. Naomi didn't answer immediately. She turned the pages around and held them out. A list. Names, dates, locations. No explanations. Just records. Adrian scanned the first few lines. Elias Vance, marked. Gone. Below that, others. Engineers. Analysts. Field consultants. The kind of people who didn't make headlines, but built the systems that did. Adrian's thumb brushed the edge of his watch again. Once. Stop. Then his eyes moved further down. Blah. And stopped. There it was. Adrian Cole. No date, no location, just the name. Unresolved. For a second, the world didn't shift. Then it did. Not outwardly, not in sound or movement. But something inside Adrian adjusted, quietly, precisely. Naomi was watching him now. Not the list. Him. "You knew," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a test. Adrian didn't look up. "I suspected," he said. "That you were on it? That something like this existed." Naomi's grip tightened on the paper. "That's not the same thing." "No," Adrian said. "It's worse." The wind moved across the ridge, lifting loose snow into thin streaks that passed them like ghosts. Atlas sat down beside Naomi, his weight settling carefully. He didn't look at the list. He looked at her. Hawk remained standing. Adrian reached deeper into the box. Maps. He unfolded one. Pipelines. Not labeled clearly, but structured enough. Routes cutting across terrain, converging near water sources, branching outward again. Not infrastructure meant to be seen. Infrastructure meant to be used. Naomi leaned closer. "My father was mapping discharge points," she said. "Tracking contamination." Adrian nodded once. "And hiding it somewhere they wouldn't look," he added. "Here," Naomi said, "because it doesn't exist." Adrian set the map aside and picked up the data drive. He turned it in his hand. No label. Of course. Naomi watched him carefully. "That's everything he had left," she said. "Everything he thought would matter." Adrian didn't respond, because he already knew. It wasn't enough. Naomi seemed to read that in his silence. "Say it," she said. Adrian looked at her now. "This won't hold," he said. "Not by itself." Her jaw tightened. "There are names," she said. Patterns. Routes. No system logs. Adrian cut in. No internal records. No chain of access. Naomi stood up abruptly, snow scattering from her knees. So what, you're saying this means nothing? I'm saying, Adrian replied evenly, rising as well. It won't stop anything. Silence. Then, Naomi exhaled sharply, turning away. For a moment, she looked smaller. Not weaker, just carrying too much in one place. She pulled something from inside her jacket. A phone, not new, durable, modified. She hesitated before unlocking it, then handed it to Adrian. A contact, she said. Last thing my father gave me that I didn't understand. Adrian took it. A number. No name. He looked at her. She knows what this is supposed to be, Naomi added. Adrian dialed. It rang twice. A woman answered. Say something useful, the voice said immediately. No greeting, no hesitation. Adrian didn't identify himself. He didn't need to. Well, we have documentation, he said. Routes, names. A pause. Short. Then you have a story, the voice replied. Not a case. Adrian glanced at Naomi. Her expression didn't change. We need to make it one, he said. Another pause. Longer this time. Then you're missing the only thing that matters, the voice said. And that is? Proof they can't erase. The line stayed open. Adrian didn't speak. Neither did Naomi. Between them, the list of names shifted slightly in the wind. Incomplete. Unfinished at. And not enough. Night didn't fall. It pressed in. The last light drained from the ridge in a matter of minutes, leaving the cabin wrapped in a kind of gray that swallowed depth. Snow kept moving, thin and constant, blurring edges until the world looked unfinished. Inside, the fire had burned lower. Adrian stood near the table, the opened metal box still spread across its surface. The map lay flattened under his hand. The list of names rested beside it, edges lifting slightly with the draft that slipped through the walls. Naomi was pacing. Not wide circles, short, tight turns, like she was working through something that refused to settle. Atlas followed her with his eyes but didn't move. Hawk, on the other hand, wasn't looking at either of them. He was facing the door. Still. Completely still. Adrian noticed that first. Then the change. Hawk's posture didn't tighten. It narrowed. Like everything in him had shifted toward a single point. Adrian's thumb brushed his watch. Once. Stop. What is it? Naomi asked, catching the shift in his attention. Adrian didn't answer right away. He walked toward Hawk, slower than usual, watching the angle of the dog's head. Not the door. Lower. Closer to the ground. Adrian followed that line. Not outside. Inside. Near Naomi. Don't move, he said quietly. Naomi froze. What? Your bag. Her eyes flicked down, then back up. Adrian crossed the space between them in 3 controlled steps. He didn't grab. He opened, checked, shifted items aside. Clothes. Documents. A wrapped container. Then, there. Small. Too clean. A dark piece of hardware, no larger than a coin, tucked into a seam where it didn't belong. Adrian removed it without hesitation. The moment it left the bag, Hawk's focus lifted. Naomi stared at it. That's not mine. No, Adrian said. It's theirs. The words landed harder than the object itself. Naomi's breathing changed, faster, sharper. I checked everything, she said. Before I left, You checked what you knew to check, Adrian replied. He crushed the device under his boot. A sharp crack, then silence. Too late. Naomi stepped back, one hand tightening around the strap of her bag. That means... They've been tracking you since before you got here. Adrian didn't need to say the rest. They both understood. The house wasn't hidden. It was a destination. A sound cut through the wind. Not loud, not distant. Close. Engines. Adrian moved immediately, crossing to the window but not looking out directly. He shifted angle, using reflection, shadow, anything but a straight line of sight. Lights. 2 vehicles, maybe 3. Stopping short of the ridge, not rushing. That told him everything. They're not here to search, Adrian said. Naomi's voice came out lower now. Then what? They already know where we are. Hawk let out a low sound. Not warning, not panic. Confirmation. The first door didn't break. It opened. That was the difference. A man stepped inside without hesitation. He didn't rush, didn't scan wildly. He walked like he had been here before, even if he hadn't. Victor Hale hadn't aged the way most men did. He had sharpened. Mid-50s maybe. Clean cut. No wasted motion. His coat was dark, fitted. Not for warmth, but for control. His eyes moved once across the room, taking everything in, then settled on Adrian. Not surprised. Expected. Adrian. No rank. No greeting. Just the name. Adrian didn't move. Hale. Behind him, others entered, but they didn't matter. Not yet. Victor Hale stepped further in, boots quiet on the wood. You weren't spared, he said, voice calm, almost conversational. A small pause. You were preserved. The word hung there. Adrian's jaw shifted once. Naomi didn't lower her stance. She angled slightly, placing herself closer to the table, closer to the box. Hale noticed. Of course he did. You found it, he said, glancing at the contents. That saves time. Naomi spoke before Adrian could. You killed him. Hale looked at her, not dismissive, not dismissing, assessing. Your father, he said, made a decision. That decision got him buried. No, Hale replied evenly. That decision made him visible. Silence. Then Adrian stepped forward, just enough to shift the focus. This isn't enough, he said, nodding toward the documents. You know that. Hale's eyes returned to him. Yes, he said. I do. Another step closer. That's why you're here. Not Naomi. Not the evidence. Adrian! Naomi's voice broke in, sharper now. We already sent it. Hale smiled, not wide, not amused, just knowing. No, you didn't. He gestured slightly. If you had, I wouldn't be here. The room tightened again. Adrian felt it now. Not tension, but compression. Time narrowing. Hale continued. You have pieces, he said. Fragments. Enough to understand. Not enough to prove. He looked at Adrian again. But you always understood that. Adrian didn't answer. Because he had. Hale tilted his head slightly. The system still recognizes you, he said. Your access hasn't been revoked. Naomi turned to Adrian. What is he talking about? Adrian's thumb pressed against the side of his watch. Didn't move. Core server, he said. Internal archive. Hale nodded once. That's where the truth lives, he added. Not in boxes. Naomi shook her head. That means nothing if we can't get to it. Hale's gaze flicked to her, then back. You can't, he said. Then, after a beat, he can. The meaning settled slowly. Then, all at once, Naomi stepped back. No. Adrian didn't look at her. Hale spoke again. It requires biometric confirmation, he said. Continuous link. Another pause. No interruptions. Adrian understood immediately. Of course it worked that way. Of course it would. Naomi did too. That means, she started. He stays, Hale finished. Silence. The fire cracked again, louder now. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, everything narrowed to a single point. Adrian moved. Not fast, not aggressive. Just decided. Hale's men reacted instantly. One moved to intercept. Hawk did too. The impact wasn't loud, but it was violent. Fur. Motion. Force. The man went down hard, Hawk's weight driving him sideways. A sharp sound. Bone or wood. Adrian couldn't tell. Then another movement. Atlas. Despite the limp, he surged forward, not toward the nearest threat, but toward Hawk. Supporting. Covering. The second man hesitated. That was enough. Adrian reached the table, grabbing the data drive, the map. Whatever mattered in seconds, not minutes. Naomi moved with him now. Not questioning, not arguing. Acting. Hale didn't shout, didn't rush. He watched. Because he already knew the outcome. Adrian turned toward Naomi. Their eyes met. You leave, he said. No, she answered immediately. You leave, he repeated. Her hand tightened around the drive. We don't have time for this. Adrian stepped closer, lowered his voice. If I start it, I don't walk out. The words didn't break. They landed. Naomi shook her head once. Hard. We find another way. Adrian held her gaze. There isn't one. Behind them, movement resumed. Hale's men recovering, repositioning. Hawk stood again. But something in his stance had changed. Weight uneven. Injured. Atlas stayed beside him. Didn't move forward. Didn't retreat. Stayed. Adrian looked at both dogs for half a second. Then back to Naomi. Go. She didn't. But she understood. And that was worse. The system wasn't inside the house. It was beneath it. Adrian had known that before he bought the place. Not the full structure, not the scale, but enough to recognize the pattern. Remote access points were never where they looked like they were. They were always buried under something forgettable, like a cabin no one owned. The hatch was in the back room, under warped floorboards Naomi had stepped over twice without noticing. It took Adrian less than 10 seconds to pry them loose. Cold air rose from below, not the dry cold of winter, but something deeper, mechanical, preserved. Naomi stared down into the narrow descent, her fingers tightening around the data drive. You knew, she said. Adrian didn't deny it. I knew something was here. That's not the same. No, he said. It's enough. Behind them, movement echoed from the front of the house, boots shifting, controlled voices. And Victor Hale wasn't rushing. He didn't need to. Adrian dropped into the access shaft first. Metal rungs, old but reinforced. His weight didn't test them. They held. Hawk hesitated only a fraction of a second before following. Atlas came last, slower, favoring his leg, but refusing to stay behind. Naomi closed the hatch above them. The sound of its ceiling was quieter than it should have been. Below, the space opened into something that didn't belong under a wooden cabin. Low ceiling, concrete, wiring running along the walls in organized lines. A server rack built into the far end, old hardware, but still active. A faint hum pulsed through the room, steady and indifferent. Adrian moved to the console. No hesitation. He placed his hand against the reader. It lit up instantly. Recognized. Naomi watched the small green indicator flicker to life. "You said your access wasn't revoked," she said. Adrian didn't look at her. It wasn't forgotten either. The system booted in layers. Old interface, no graphics, just command lines and locked directories, waiting behind authentication. Naomi stepped beside him, plugging in the drive. Her hands were steady now. Not calm. Resolved. "Tell me what to do," she said. Adrian glanced at her to her. "You already know." That was the truth. She initiated the upload. The system responded with a delay. Not resistance. Not failure. Calculation. Then, transfer began. Numbers started moving across the screen, slow at first, then accelerating. Data pulling from storage sectors Naomi hadn't known existed. Logs, access chains, internal flags. Everything Irene had said they didn't have. Now they did. Above them, something heavy moved. A door, wood breaking under pressure. Naomi didn't look up. "How long?" she asked. Adrian watched the progress. "Too long." The hum in the room deepened. Not louder. Denser. The system was pulling more than it was designed to move at once. Naomi noticed. "This isn't normal," she said. "No," Adrian replied. "It's not." He didn't explain further. Not yet. The floor above them shook once. Sharp. Controlled. Hawk's head lifted immediately, ears angled toward the ceiling. Atlas shifted closer to Naomi. Adrian kept his eyes on the screen. 30%. 40. The numbers climbed, but the system lagged behind them, struggling to keep pace. Naomi stepped back slightly. "What happens when it finishes?" Adrian didn't answer. Not because he didn't know. Because he did. She looked at him. Really looked. And something in her expression changed. Not fear. Not panic. Understanding. "You knew," she said. Adrian's thumb pressed lightly against the side of his watch. Still. Yes. The word didn't carry weight. It didn't need to. Naomi's jaw tightened. "You didn't say anything. There wasn't time. There was enough to tell me the truth." Adrian finally turned to her. "If I had," he said, "you would have tried to stop it." She didn't deny that. Because she would have. The system surged again. 58%. Above them, footsteps. Closer now. Not searching. Descending. Victor Hale wasn't waiting anymore. Naomi took a step toward the console. "I'm not leaving," she said. Adrian shook his head once. "That's not your call." "It is if I'm the one sending it." He stepped in front of her, not aggressive, not forceful. "Final. You finish it," he said. "Then you go." "No." Naomi. Her name landed differently this time. Not instruction, not warning. A line. Hawk moved closer, not to Adrian, to Naomi. He stood beside her, not blocking, not pushing, just present. She looked down at him. Something softened, then broke. "You don't get to decide this alone," she said quietly. Adrian held her gaze. "I already did." The system hit 70%. Heat began to rise. Not sharp, not immediate, but building. Naomi felt it. "What is that?" she asked. Adrian didn't look at the readouts anymore. Thermal overload. Her breath caught. You're forcing it. Yes. That will... I know. The words came out flat, not defensive, accepted. Above them, the metal hatch buckled. A dull impact. Then another. Time collapsed inward. 82%. Adrian stepped back, looked at Hawk. Hawk! The dog's eyes locked onto him. Go with her! Hawk didn't move. Adrian's voice didn't change. Go. Nothing. For a second. Just one. The past surfaced. A memory neither of them needed to see. A command given. Ignored. A life saved because of it. This was the same moment. But it wasn't. Adrian's jaw tightened. Now. Hawk stood still. Then, he turned. Not away. Toward Naomi. Positioning himself beside her. Choosing. Adrian exhaled once. Not disappointment. Understanding. 94%. The hatch tore open. Metal scream. Victor Hale dropped down first, landing with controlled precision. His eyes adjusted instantly, taking in the room, the console, the numbers. You always did take it too far, he said. Adrian stepped forward, not rushing, not hesitating. Closing the distance. Hale drew his weapon. Didn't fire. Not yet. 98%. Naomi's hand hovered over the final confirmation. Her fingers trembled once, then steadied. She pressed it. Complete. The system didn't explode. It failed. Lights flickered once. Then the hum collapsed into a high-pitched strain, metal expanding under pressure, circuits overheating faster than they could compensate. Adrian didn't look back. Go! Naomi grabbed the drive. Atlas moved with her. Hawk hesitated 1 second longer, then hollowed. Up the ladder. Away. Adrian remained. Victor Hale watched him. For the first time. Not control. Recognition. You could have walked away again, Hale said. Adrian shook his head slightly. Not this time. The heat spiked. The room began to distort at the edges. Systems failing. Irreversible. Adrian's thumb touched his watch one last time. Didn't turn it. Didn't need to. Above, the hatch slammed shut. Below, the system gave out. Morning came quietly. Snow had covered most of the damage. The cabin was gone. Not in a single blast, but collapsed inward, blackened from beneath. Naomi stood at the edge of what used to be the porch, Atlas beside her. Hawk sat a few steps behind. Still. Watching. Not the ruins. The space. For a long time, no one moved. Then Hawk stood. Walked forward. Past the edge of the burn. Past the place Adrian had been. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. He came to Naomi's side. And stayed. Some men don't escape what they were. They decide what it was worth. Sometimes the hardest truth is this. You don't get to undo what you were part of. Only decide what you're willing to stand for when it finally matters. Adrian didn't survive because he was stronger than the system. He survived because, in the end, he chose not to run from it again. In our own lives, we may never face something this extreme. But we all reach moments where staying silent is easier, and doing the right thing costs more than we want to pay. And sometimes, that quiet choice, made when no one is watching, is what defines everything that comes after. If this story meant something to you, I'd like to hear where you're watching from, and what part stayed with you the most. Feel free to share your thoughts, and subscribe if you'd like more stories like this. Wherever you are tonight, May you find the courage to choose what is right, and the peace to live with that choice.